Stop for a moment, because what you're about to hear will change how you handle pain, betrayal, stress, and emotional pressure for the rest of your life. This is the psychology that makes a person emotionally bulletproof. The kind of strength Machiavelli believed only a rare few ever master. The kind of calm that turns an ordinary mind into an unshakable one. And today, you become one of them, because emotional bulletproofing is not about being cold. It is not about pretending nothing affects you. It is not about shutting people out. It is about understanding your emotions so deeply that they never control you again. It is about staying calm when life becomes chaotic. It is about staying stable when people try to provoke you. It is about staying focused when situations pull you in 100 directions. Machiavelli understood something powerful. He saw leaders collapse because their emotions overpowered their judgment. He saw kings lose everything because they made decisions in panic. He saw strong men break when pressure became too heavy. And from all of this, he discovered one truth. The difference between the people who survive life's storms and the people who are destroyed by them is emotional control. Emotional control is the shield that protects your mind, the armor that protects your peace, the boundary that protects your strength. When you become emotionally bulletproof, you do not collapse when things go wrong. You do not panic when life becomes unpredictable. You do not break when someone tries to hurt you. You do not react when someone tries to trigger you. Instead, you rise, you pause, you observe, you respond with clarity instead of fear. You choose strategy instead of impulse. You stand firmly in your power while others lose theirs. Most people are emotionally fragile because they were never taught to control their inner world. They were raised on emotional reactions. They were shaped by fear. They were trained to respond instantly to pressure. And without realizing it, they became emotional mirrors, reflecting anger, reflecting stress, reflecting negativity, reflecting insecurity, taking on the emotions of anyone who enters their day. And this emotional mirroring is why they suffer, why they break, why they fall into manipulation, why they feel drained by people. Machiavelli saw this pattern centuries ago. He saw rulers manipulated because their emotions were predictable. He saw kings destroyed because their fears were visible. He saw soldiers defeated because their anger controlled them. And he learned that the easiest person to manipulate is the one you can emotionally predict. The moment someone knows exactly what offends you, they can destabilize you. The moment someone knows what scares you, they can corner you. The moment someone knows what you desperately want, they can control you. Emotional predictability is emotional weakness, and emotional weakness is how people lose everything. But when you become emotionally bulletproof, everything changes. You stop reacting instantly. You stop absorbing negativity. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't deserve explanations. You stop allowing your emotions to make decisions for you. You start thinking more clearly. You start listening with understanding. You start responding with intention. You start observing without absorbing. And your emotional life becomes stable, calm, and grounded. You begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. You feel in control. The first step toward becoming emotionally bulletproof is understanding this. Emotions are not instructions. They are information. Fear is information, not a command. Anger is information, not a command. Stress is information, not a command. Disrespect is information, not a command. When you stop treating emotions as orders and start treating them as signals, you finally take back control. Machiavelli wrote that a wise person must let their intellect guide their decisions, not their impulses. He meant that emotions are temporary, but consequences are permanent. He meant that emotional reactions create long-term damage. He meant that people who react instantly always lose power. And that is the foundation of emotional bulletproofing. You must learn to pause. A pause is not weakness. A pause is not fear. A pause is not hesitation. A pause is power. Because in that pause, you choose clarity over chaos. You choose control over reaction. You choose intelligence over impulse. And with every pause, you become stronger, more centered, more grounded, more unshakable. Slowly, you begin to shift. Suddenly, insults no longer bother you the way they once did. Disrespect no longer cuts as deeply. Pressure no longer scares you. Conflict no longer destabilizes you. Instead, you stay calm, you stay balanced, you stay strategic. And the more calm you become, the more powerful you appear. Because calmness in chaos is intimidating. Calmness is rare. Calmness is strength. Calmness is control. And Machiavelli believed that the calmest person in the room holds the real power. The person who does not rush. The person who does not break. The person who does not react. The person who does not lose themselves. And now you are becoming that person. The emotionally bulletproof one. The one who cannot be manipulated by words. Cannot be provoked by insults. Cannot be controlled by fear. Cannot be shaken by pressure. But to reach the next level of emotional power, you must understand the first core principle Machiavelli taught every ruler. You must become emotionally unpredictable, because predictable emotions give others control. But unpredictable calmness gives you all the power. And becoming emotionally unpredictable does not mean being unstable. It does not mean being inconsistent. It does not mean confusing people for attention. Emotional unpredictability means one thing: people cannot trigger you. They cannot control you through your usual reactions. They cannot push the same emotional buttons and expect the same emotional responses. And because they cannot predict your emotions, they cannot manipulate them. This is exactly what Machiavelli understood. He knew that the person who cannot be emotionally controlled becomes the most difficult person to influence, attack, or undermine. Because emotional predictability is a roadmap for your enemies. But emotional stability with strategic unpredictability turns that map into fog. And when people cannot read you easily, they begin to respect you automatically. They speak more carefully. They act more responsibly. They think before provoking you, not because they fear your reaction, but because they do not know what your reaction will be. That uncertainty creates psychological power, and that power strengthens your emotional armor. To become emotionally unpredictable, the first step is to control your emotional signals. The tone of your voice, the speed of your responses, the expressions on your face, the way you breathe when someone tries to upset you. Because people read your emotional signals faster than your words. They can see when you're irritated. They can hear when you're stressed. They can sense when you're insecure. They can feel when you're panicking. But when your emotional signals are calm, steady, and controlled, even when someone tries to provoke you, they lose their ability to destabilize you. And here's the truth. Nothing confuses a manipulator more than a calm person. Nothing irritates a toxic person more than a grounded response. Nothing weakens an aggressor more than someone they cannot emotionally influence. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that a ruler must appear composed even in the face of danger. He wasn't talking about pretending. He was talking about mastering the skill of calmness, because calmness protects your mind from emotional invasion. Calmness is your defense. Calmness is your strategy. Calmness is your psychological shield. But emotional unpredictability has a second layer. You must also break your own emotional habits. Most people have predictable emotional cycles. When someone disrespects them, they react instantly. When someone pulls away, they chase. When someone raises their voice, they raise theirs. When someone blames them, they defend themselves. When someone tests them, they explain themselves. These patterns make you easy to read, easy to control, easy to manipulate. But when you interrupt these emotional habits, everything changes. Someone disrespects you. Instead of reacting, you stay silent. Someone pulls away. Instead of chasing, you maintain your pace. Someone raises their voice. Instead of matching it, you speak more slowly. Someone blames you unfairly. Instead of defending yourself, you observe. Someone tries to provoke you. Instead of responding emotionally, you remain calm. These shifts confuse people. They create psychological distance. They change the power dynamic instantly. Because when someone expects a reaction and doesn't get one, they feel exposed. Their manipulation collapses, their strategy breaks, their confidence weakens. This is how emotional unpredictability gives you power, not through aggression. Not through conflict, but through calm defiance, through emotional discipline, through the refusal to be controlled. Machiavelli believed that the person who can control how they appear emotionally gains influence without effort, because people respect those who are difficult to shake, those who do not crumble easily, those who do not panic quickly, those who do not react impulsively. Emotional unpredictability also strengthens your strategic mind. When you stop reacting emotionally, your mind becomes sharper. You see motives instead of emotions. You notice patterns instead of words. You recognize manipulation instead of feeling offended. You pick up on intentions before they're spoken, because emotional stillness increases perception. It increases awareness. It increases emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence makes you harder to mislead, harder to lie to, harder to guilt, harder to confuse, harder to emotionally influence. This is what it means to be emotionally bulletproof. But to truly reach that level, you must learn the second major lesson Machiavelli built his philosophy on. You must separate what you feel from what you do. Most people feel something and act on it instantly. They feel fear and retreat. They feel anger and lash out. They feel offended and respond emotionally. They feel insecure and seek reassurance. They feel sad and make self-destructive decisions. They feel pressure and collapse. Feelings become actions, and actions become regret. But the emotionally bulletproof person does something different. They feel emotion. Then they pause. Then they evaluate. Then they choose the response that protects their long-term position, not the response that relieves the temporary feeling. This separation is the foundation of emotional strength. You allow yourself to feel the emotion, but you do not obey it. You do not follow it. You do not let it decide your next move. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that a wise person must learn to control their impulses or be controlled by them. Because emotional acting is how people lose everything. But emotional awareness without emotional obedience is how people gain power. Once you master this separation, you condition your mind to stay disciplined under pressure. Conflict no longer pushes you into panic. Pain no longer forces you into self-destruction. Stress no longer dictates your behavior. Disrespect no longer provokes you uncontrollably. You choose who you are in every moment, not your emotions, not your fear, not your insecurity. And when you reach this point, people begin to notice something unusual about you. You don't crumble when others think you will. You don't react when people try to provoke you. You don't explain yourself when people try to guilt you. You don't panic when life tests you. You don't chase when someone pulls away. You stand still, confident, calm, collected, and this calmness becomes the beginning of your emotional dominance. But there is another level waiting for you. A deeper level Machiavelli believed only the strongest minds would ever reach. And that level begins with understanding the most dangerous emotional trap humans fall into. The trap that destroys self-respect. The trap that fuels manipulation. The trap that weakens your psychological foundation. The trap that you must escape if you truly want to become emotionally bulletproof. And that emotional trap is the need for external validation. The need to be understood. The need to be liked. The need to defend yourself. The need to prove your worth to people who do not even value themselves. This trap is the greatest emotional weakness a person can have. Because as long as you need validation from others, you give them the power to destroy you. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He wrote that a ruler must never depend on the goodwill of others because goodwill is unstable. Goodwill changes quickly. Goodwill disappears the moment people feel threatened or inconvenienced. And today, this same principle applies to emotional strength. Most people are terrified of being disliked, terrified of disappointing others, terrified of being misunderstood, terrified of being judged. And this terror controls their emotions, it controls their choices, it controls their reactions, it controls their life. They avoid conflict because they want to be liked. They tolerate disrespect because they want to be chosen. They stay silent because they want acceptance. They explain themselves endlessly because they fear losing approval. And without realizing it, they become prisoners. Prisoners of perception, prisoners of opinion, prisoners of expectations, prisoners of other people's emotions. But here is the truth Machiavelli knew. The person who fears being disliked will always be controlled by those who are not afraid to displease them. The person who fears being judged will always obey those who judge loudly. The person who fears losing relationships will always be manipulated by those who threaten to leave. The person who fears rejection will always surrender their power to avoid it. This is why emotional weakness destroys strong minds. It makes you obedient to the wrong people. It makes you tolerant of the wrong behaviors. It makes you loyal in the wrong direction. It makes you sensitive to things that should not matter. And it breaks your emotional foundation slowly, quietly, painfully. But once you escape the need for external validation, something incredible happens. You stop needing people to like you. You stop needing them to understand you. You stop needing them to approve of your choices. You stop needing them to agree with your boundaries. You stop needing them to validate your worth. And without that need, you become emotionally bulletproof. Because the person who no longer needs approval becomes the most unpredictable person in the room, the most stable, the most grounded, the most independent. And emotional independence gives you a level of psychological freedom that most people never experience. People can try to judge you, but judgment no longer controls you. People can try to manipulate you, but manipulation no longer works. People can try to provoke you, but provoking you no longer gives them power. People can try to guilt you, but guilt no longer weakens you. This is what emotional bulletproofing looks like. It is not coldness, it is self-respect. It is not detachment from people. It is detachment from their opinion of you. It is not ignoring emotions, it is mastering them. And once you reach this stage, your life begins to shift. You begin making decisions based on logic and values, not fear and insecurity. You begin choosing relationships based on respect and alignment, not loneliness or emotional dependence. You begin enforcing boundaries without explaining them. You begin walking away from situations that drain you. You begin saying no without guilt. You begin speaking less and observing more, and your presence becomes heavier, stronger, more intentional. This is why Machiavelli wrote that a leader must be self-sufficient, emotionally and mentally, because the person who cannot stand alone will always kneel for approval. And those who kneel for approval cannot walk with power. But escaping the validation trap requires one more step. You must learn to face discomfort without collapsing, because emotional bulletproofing is not built in moments of peace. It is built in moments of pressure, when someone disrespects you, when someone misunderstands you, when someone blames you unfairly, when someone tests your boundaries, when someone tries to guilt you, when someone pulls away to control you. These are the moments that shape your emotional armor, and most people collapse in these moments. They defend themselves desperately. They try to prove their innocence. They chase after people. They apologize just to restore peace. They break their own boundaries to avoid discomfort. But every time you break yourself to make others comfortable, you weaken your emotional structure. And every time you choose comfort over courage, your emotional armor cracks. The emotionally bulletproof person does the opposite. When discomfort appears, they breathe, they pause, they observe, they stay still. They allow the discomfort. They do not rush to escape it. They do not break their values to reduce it. They do not sacrifice their strength to ease it. They hold their position. And the moment you hold your position through discomfort, you grow self-respect. You grow discipline. You grow emotional control. You grow psychological independence. And this growth is what makes you unstoppable. Because the person who can stand in discomfort without losing control becomes someone no one can influence emotionally. This is the lesson Machiavelli knew. The people who win in life are not those who avoid discomfort. They are those who remain calm inside it. But now you must learn the next stage of emotional bulletproofing, a deeper stage. A stage that almost no one masters because emotional armor is not enough. To become truly unshakable, you must learn how to transform emotional attacks into strategic advantage. And Machiavelli believed that the person who can turn emotional pain into psychological power becomes undefeatable. And this is where your transformation enters a level most people will never reach. Because emotional armor protects you, but emotional alchemy empowers you. Emotional alchemy means using emotional attacks as fuel instead of wounds. It means turning pain into data, turning betrayal into clarity, turning disrespect into boundaries, turning pressure into strength, turning manipulation attempts into psychological advantage. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that a wise person must learn from the actions of others, not just react to them. Because the emotionally bulletproof person does not crumble when someone attacks their character. They analyze the attacker. They read the motive. They notice the insecurity behind the insult. They observe the fear behind the aggression. They recognize the desperation behind the manipulation. They see the weakness behind the disrespect. And instead of feeling hurt, they gain information. Emotional alchemy is the art of using emotional events to sharpen your intelligence. Someone insults you. The average person feels wounded. The emotionally bulletproof person studies the insecurity that made the person insult them. Someone pulls away to get a reaction. The average person panics and chases. The emotionally bulletproof person observes the tactic and refuses to respond, exposing the manipulator's weakness. Someone tries to guilt you. The average person gets trapped in emotional obligations. The emotionally bulletproof person sees guilt as a manipulation pattern and disconnects from the attempt. Someone tries to provoke you. The average person reacts instantly. The emotionally bulletproof person stays calm and watches the provoker fall apart when their plan fails. This is emotional alchemy in action, turning every emotional moment into psychological advantage. Because once you stop taking things personally, you begin to see the truth behind every behavior. Anger is often a mask for fear. Insults are often a mask for inferiority. Manipulation is often a mask for dependency. Silence is often a mask for guilt. And betrayal is often a mask for opportunity. When you learn to decode these emotions, you stop being emotionally controlled. You start being emotionally informed. Machiavelli believed that knowledge is power, and emotional knowledge is the highest form of it. Because people reveal more truth through emotional behavior than through spoken words. They reveal their loyalties when pressure rises. They reveal their intentions when conflict appears. They reveal their priorities when choices appear. They reveal their real feelings when they cannot hide their reactions. And the emotionally bulletproof person watches all of this with clarity. They don't react. They don't break. They don't panic. They don't crumble. They simply watch and understand. This emotional alchemy leads into another crucial principle. You must master the power of emotional isolation. Emotional isolation does not mean being disconnected from life. It does not mean avoiding people. It does not mean suppressing your emotions. Emotional isolation means protecting your inner world so deeply that no external event can hijack your emotional state. It means building an emotional space inside your mind that no one can enter unless you allow them. It means learning to separate other people's emotions from your own. Someone else's anger is not your anger. Someone else's anxiety is not your anxiety. Someone else's insecurity is not your insecurity. Someone else's chaos is not your chaos. The emotionally bulletproof person does not absorb the moods of others. They do not carry stress that is not theirs. They do not inherit emotional burdens that do not belong to them. They stand firmly inside their emotional isolation, and inside that space they think clearly. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that a leader must maintain an inner fortress, a mental space that protects them from the instability of others, because people project. They project fear. They project anger, they project jealousy, they project insecurity, they project frustration. And if you are emotionally open to all of this, you become psychologically contaminated. But when you maintain emotional isolation, you remain grounded even when the world around you becomes chaotic. You remain calm even when people try to provoke you. You remain balanced even when people try to pull you into their emotional storms. And inside that isolation, something powerful happens. You develop emotional patience. Emotional patience is the ability to wait before reacting, to let the truth reveal itself, to allow people to expose their own motives, to let the situation mature before making your move. The emotionally bulletproof person is patient because they do not need instant emotional satisfaction. They do not need to react immediately. They do not need to correct every misunderstanding. They do not need to respond to every disrespect. They wait. They observe. They analyze. They let people talk. They let situations unfold. And while everyone else is reacting emotionally, they are gathering information. And this information becomes power. Because emotional patience reveals things that emotional impulsiveness never will. People tell on themselves when they think you are silent. They reveal their truth when they assume you are not paying attention. They expose their intentions when they believe you are not reacting. And Machiavelli wrote that the person who waits sees more truth than the person who reacts. This leads to the final stage of emotional bulletproofing. You must learn to remain emotionally dominant without becoming emotionally aggressive. Emotional dominance is not about overpowering others. It is not about emotional intimidation. It is not about controlling people. Emotional dominance is the power to control yourself so completely that others adjust their behavior around you. People choose their words carefully around you. People avoid crossing your boundaries. People think before disrespecting you. People hesitate before lying to you. People change their tone when speaking to you. Your emotional presence becomes a silent authority. This is what Machiavelli admired in great leaders, not their hardness, but their calmness, not their aggression, but their discipline, not their emotional coldness, but their emotional mastery. And you are now stepping into that exact level of strength. But your journey is not over, because there is one final transformation left. A transformation that completes your emotional armor. A transformation that makes you completely unshakable. And that final stage begins with understanding the greatest power an emotionally bulletproof person holds. The power to walk away without fear. And the power to walk away without fear is the final stage of becoming emotionally bulletproof. Because nothing gives you more control over your emotions than the ability to remove yourself from situations, relationships, and environments that damage your peace. Most people cannot walk away. They stay because they fear loneliness, they fear judgment, they fear abandonment, they fear missing out, they fear discomfort, they fear starting over, and that fear becomes the chain that keeps them emotionally trapped. Machiavelli understood that the person who cannot leave is the person who can be controlled. The person who fears walking away becomes obedient, predictable, weak, but the person who can walk away becomes impossible to manipulate. Because when you have the courage to leave, no one can trap you with guilt. When you have the courage to leave, no one can destabilize you with threats. When you have the courage to leave, no one can force you into emotional submission. Walking away does not make you cold. It makes you powerful. It means your self-respect is stronger than your fear. It means your values are stronger than your attachments. It means your peace is more important than someone else's approval. And once you learn to walk away, your emotional world becomes unshakable. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop accepting half-effort relationships. You stop entertaining emotional manipulation. You stop explaining your worth to people who never cared to understand it. You stop fighting for spaces you were never meant to be in. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into the comfort of others. You stop wasting energy on people who drain you. And you start moving towards something stronger. A life built on clarity, boundaries, peace, purpose, and emotional mastery, because walking away is not about leaving others. It is about choosing yourself, choosing your dignity, choosing your standards, choosing your mental stability, choosing your emotional longevity, and choosing a life where your happiness is not dependent on the unpredictable emotions of others. Machiavelli believed that the most powerful individuals were those who could detach from what weakened them, whether it was a failed alliance, a disloyal advisor, or a harmful environment. He understood that cutting away what harms you is an act of survival, and the same applies to emotional bulletproofing. When you learn to detach from situations that no longer serve you, you become someone who cannot be emotionally trapped. Detachment is not indifference. Detachment is control. It is the ability to feel emotions without letting them dictate your actions. It is the ability to care without losing yourself. It is the ability to love without surrendering your self-respect. It is the ability to stay present without becoming dependent. And it is the ability to walk away when staying would destroy you. This level of emotional detachment creates a deep, quiet confidence inside you. A confidence that does not need validation. A confidence that does not need praise. A confidence that does not need to prove anything. A confidence that comes from knowing you can survive even the loss of what you once feared losing. And this confidence makes you emotionally indestructible. Because emotional bulletproofing is not about forcing yourself to be fearless. It is about building so much inner strength that fear has nothing left to control. It is about building a relationship with yourself so strong that betrayal cannot break you. It is about developing a calm so deep that chaos cannot overwhelm you. It is about understanding human nature so clearly that nothing surprises you. It is about mastering emotional patterns so well that no one can manipulate you. It is about becoming so grounded that you do not react to storms. You simply move through them. This is the psychology Machiavelli admired. The psychology of people who were unshaken by the world. People who moved with intention. People who responded with strategy. People who acted with discipline. People who chose their emotions wisely. People who could stand alone without collapsing. People who could lose without breaking. People who could win without becoming arrogant. People who could face betrayal without falling apart. People who could walk away without fear. And now you are becoming one of those people, emotionally bulletproof, emotionally grounded, emotionally independent, emotionally powerful. But emotional bulletproofing is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of emotion. It is the ability to feel without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to care without collapsing, to trust without being blind, to forgive without reopening the door, to remain calm without suppressing what you feel, and to choose clarity over chaos every time. When you reach this level, you no longer fear emotional challenges. You no longer fear betrayal. You no longer fear losing people. You no longer fear conflict. You no longer fear discomfort, because emotional pain does not break you anymore. It teaches you. It strengthens you. It exposes truth. It clarifies people. It builds resilience. It makes you sharper. Smarter, quieter, more focused, and more powerful, you become someone who cannot be controlled emotionally. Someone who cannot be manipulated by fear. Someone who cannot be shaken by insults. Someone who cannot be influenced by guilt. Someone who cannot be destabilized by pressure. Someone who stands tall while others fall apart. Someone who remains calm while others panic. Someone who continues forward while others collapse. And that is the highest form of strength a person can have. Emotional bulletproofing is the foundation of real power. The kind of power Machiavelli understood. The kind of power nobody can take from you. The kind of power you carry inside your mind. Quiet, steady, strong, and now the choice is yours. Continue living at the mercy of your emotions, or rise above them and become emotionally bulletproof. Machiavelli would tell you to choose the second path, because the person who masters their emotions masters their life.